Hey everybody, we're the Menschwarmers. I'm Jamie. I'm here with my friend Gabe. Gabe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Wanted to open the show tonight. We are less than 24 hours away, 24 hours past, with the Oscar win of legendary Jewish quarterback David Green.
AKA Brendan Fraser. Yeah, from School Ties, one of the great Jewish sports movies of all time. With minimal Jewish involvement. I think Dick Wolf
Dick
he
Wolf
wrote it,
wrote the
right?
movie,
He
and I
wrote. I think it
assume
was like
he's
about
Jewish.
his. He is, yeah. I think it was about like his school days, but Brendan Fraser not. But I guess like happy to claim him. Slash, I'm sure people look him up after watching School Ties.
Yeah, I
Um,
think so. I think he. I think the point of that movie isn't necessarily about. It's that like he can be an all-American football quarterback superstar at St. Matthew's Academy in Massachusetts and still be, suffer a lot of anti-Semitism, especially because he's, a working class Jewish teenager. But
Yeah. So it is Monday night, March 13th. We are currently in the throes of a not great Israel baseball game. We're bringing this as a little sort of midweek, mid World Baseball Classic update, and we have a very very exciting interview coming up that Gabe did with Spencer Horwitz. First baseman and outfielder in the Toronto Blue Jays organization. He hasn't made the majors yet, but he's on the 40 man. And of course for Team Israel. So let's talk a little bit about what happened so far at the WBC.
our our local hero, a big hero
Yeah,
from Sunday's game, Spencer Horwitz in the bottom of the eighth inning hit a single to knock in the tying run of the game, and then set up Garrett Stubbs's sort of game-winning double.
yeah, that's right. So it was a very tight game. Israel had like men on in the first several innings. Couldn't get one over. Just sort of
Couldn't
bad
get
luck,
anyone across.
Yeah, bad BABIP luck, bad cluster luck, like all the bad things that can happen to you. It was a 1-0 game. Dean Kramer, I think, pitched 4 innings that were, pretty much untouched by Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm.
Had a few men on, but nobody really threatening. Nicaragua did manage to plate 1 run, and, Israel just couldn't get it through until the bottom of the 8th when Spencer came up with 2 men on and got a single to left field that scored the tying run. He was later driven in by Garrett Stubbs. For I guess the third run of the game,
But
and Israel went on to win 3-1.
Israel's first run of the tournament, very big nachas for him, and very excited to have him on the show today. It's a fun conversation talking about his upbringing in, I would say, densely Jewish Baltimore.
Right.
There aren't a lot of major league players you hear about from Baltimore, especially from as big of an ortho community as they have. A place that's pretty religious, not so much Spencer himself, but a huge and strong Jewish community. I'm sure we've got plenty of listeners in the Charm City.
Right.
And then we talk about his life during the pandemic, his time spent with his parents, and his major league dreams, including, I'll keep you guys posted on his updates and whether or not he makes the league over the next few weeks. You can stay here for all your Spencer Horwitz news.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep people in the loop. He was put on the Jays 40-man roster to keep from being picked in the Rule 5. He's 25
an
years old.
OBP of around 400 last year at 2
Yeah,
levels of the minors.
he's one of the, he had a great walk rate last year in AA and AAA where he played. That's something you often see people who talk about prospects focus on because it is demonstrative that they have sort of big league ready talent that they can, take a pitch, take a walk, get on base when necessary. Unfortunately, he is blocked right now at first base, obviously by Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and Brandon Belt, the lefty who the Jays signed this offseason. Obviously you'd never wish ill health or anything like that on anyone. So, I hope that those guys are healthy and they continue to block his path in that regard. But he's trying out as an outfielder, I think in the World Baseball Classic, and that might be a place where he's able to contribute for the Jays as well. So hopefully he's able to make it up, and hopefully we'll see him in Toronto this year.
One of a number.
Or road trip to Buffalo at the very least.
That's right. One of a number of Israeli-based World Baseball Classic players who are sort of attempting to World Baseball Classic play their way onto a major league roster. Zach Geloff and Matt Mervis. So some of our top talent.
So just to mention a few other things about where Israel sits. They are, it looks like, going to lose to Puerto Rico. They are getting perfectoed through 7. They're not being mercied because they're only down 9-0. If it was 10-0, I believe it would be a 7-inning perfect game. But they will keep playing. But Nicaragua, who Israel beat yesterday, lost again today. And that means that Israel is guaranteed that they will not be the last spot in their pool. And because of the way the World Baseball Classic rules work this year, that means that Israel is automatically qualified to the next iteration of the World Baseball Classic. Like, they don't have to go through qualifying stages or anything like that. So that is exciting. And that's also, good, just because qualification can be tricky often during the middle of the Major League Baseball season, and some minor league players might be able to come, but you usually have a sort of gutted roster, and they're automatically qualified to the next WBC. So that's really excited. Regardless of how the rest of this tournament plays out, they'll be back again, and hopefully not in such a loaded group. And regardless of how this game works out against Puerto Rico, Israel still has, at least at the time we're recording this, maybe not the time you're listening, they control their own destiny. If they beat Colombia and Venezuela and the Dominican Republic, then they'll be moving on. So there's still a possibility.
Still a possibility. If they beat one of them, they can get lucky.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not over, right? They win one more game, and they'll be not necessarily laughing, but quietly chuckling. Yeah. Before we get to our interview with Spencer, Jamie, any magical, exciting Jewish sports news this week you want to discuss mid WBC?
Well, I wanted to mention that Max Homa had a pretty good showing at the Players Championship. The Players is considered the 5th major. He was sort of not really in contention directly, but had a really good weekend. He was 3 under on Sunday and ended up finishing tied for 6th place with an 8 under score, well behind Scotty Scheffler, who sort of ran away with it on Sunday. But Max is now ranked 6th in the world, which is nuts.
Remarkable.
I mean, I feel like when we were talking about golf, like this time last year, we were saying, Daniel Berger as a Jewish golfer, like, had a chance to crack the top 10 if he had a good season. Obviously, he's been dealing with injuries that have kept him out of tournament play the last many months, almost a year now. But Max has just been a rocket, and he's going to be top 5 soon. He is going to really surprise people at the upcoming majors.
I expect him to be the betting favorite at the U.S. Open.
I don't think he will be. I mean, I think there's still enough people ahead of him. Plus, there's guys who, while technically not ranked ahead of him right now because they've been playing on the Live Tour, would have been ranked ahead of him had they continued on the PGA. That's
the US. Entirely possible. But hear me out. I think bettors know that Max is, one of the hottest golfers in the world over the last year. He plays very well in California, and he owns the course record of the course at which the tournament is being played. He won the NCAA national championships there. And I expect him to see, if not the favorite, very, very close to it.
It's a great point. I do have a very small amount of money on him that I got at 40-1, and the odds have definitely changed since then.
Yes.
So yeah, it probably will be signed closer to 15 or 20 to 1 by the time of the U.S. Open in a few months. Gabe, what about you? Any Jewish news that's been going on in sports?
Sticking with golf, on the LPGA Tour, Chicago's favorite daughter, Elizabeth Sokol, or Jewish Chicago's favorite daughter, Elizabeth Sokol, had a great start to her season. 44th, a made cut at the first event in Thailand, and then in Singapore, led going into sort of about halfway through around Saturday, was leading after round 1 and round 2. And then wound up finishing top 8, which I think is the best result of her career, coming in 8th. And I think it's her 3rd or 4th year on tour. But let's see. Hope she gets a little momentum too, and delivers that trifecta of Jewish golf wins we talked about with Dan Rappaport.
That's great.
Second thing I want to bring up, real quick. We tweeted about it. We talked about it before. But number 18 Jewish F1 driver Lance Stroll competed in his first race of the season and came in 6th with 2 broken wrists and a broken toe.
That's wild.
It's I don't know how you can drive a car with one like slightly sprained wrist, let alone at 300 kilometers an hour with 2 broken ones. He put, a bunch of pictures on his Instagram of him giving the thumbs up with like full casts on his wrists 3 days before the race. Wow. And had them taken off and metal pins put in his wrist to hold them together before the race. I can't imagine the type of medication he was on for that race to keep him going for 90
I think
minutes
that's like you get an exemption from whatever. I don't know what rules there are regulating substances in F1, but like, hey man, you're going out there with 2 broken wrists, like whatever you need. Like you should get like a free exemption to like do a quick run to Tijuana and stock up
well,
on anything.
well, the event was in Bahrain, so I assume
Okay.
the people putting on the Bahraini F1 event know where to get basically anything.
Okay.
Whether or not it's legal in Bahrain is a totally different story, but I think
Right.
they're a pretty connected group. Interestingly, the rule, sort of the challenge wasn't whether or not he'll be able to drive the car as much, but the rules say that you need to be able to get in and out of the car under your own power,
Really?
which is really hard to do without a lot of risk. Yeah, in case of a crash.
Oh, it's a safety thing. Right. That
to
makes
get
sense.
out. It's a safety
Sure.
thing. And he was using his elbows to like hoist himself off the, above the car because he couldn't really put his whole body weight on the wrists.
Right.
But he was able to finish the race and he came in 6th, which is really, really remarkable. It looks
because the F1 cars are like, there's no door on them, right? You just slide in through the window.
Yeah, no, it's not a window. It's the roof. They're open.
It's a roof. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like as if they built the chassis around you, basically.
Yeah, it's like a kayak. It's like if you were getting into a kayak, but there was a 1,500 horsepower engine behind you.
Right.
So he it was a question whether or not he'd be able to get in and out of his own power. He did it, and he had a great finish. The interview after the race with Lawrence, his father, the Schmutta billionaire from Montreal, I'm surprised he didn't use the word nachas, but he, his tears were welling up, said he was a very, very proud dad. Watching his son, succeed. It was a very Jewish moment, and not just for the nepotism.
Right. I wanted to mention as well that the NCAA men's basketball tournament Division 1 is starting up soon. I'm not sure if there are many Jewish players. I haven't done a deep enough dive yet. I'm sure there are some, and people will tell us about that. But the best prospects, I would say, in terms of a rooting interest, are probably for Jewish coaches. We should say that one person who didn't make the cut is Georgia Tech coach Josh Pastner, who's actually just let go or mutual parting ways.
It was announced today he is leaving. Yes.
Yeah, he left.
Well, I don't know if it's connected, but he is leaving.
Yeah, well, they'd had a few bad years. Damon Stoudemire is actually taking over. Toronto
he is.
Raptors fans will remember. But there's at least 3 Jewish coaches in the Division 1 tournament. Joe Pasternak of UC Santa Barbara, Bruce Pearl, of course, of Auburn, who
big Zionist Bruce Pearl.
Big time, yeah. They're an 8 or 9 seed this time around. And, of course, John Schaer of Duke, who has a 5 seed. Probably the best bet to go. I mean, they have Purdue in the third round, in the third round, theoretically. But, it's Duke. Anything can happen. He's had a great year as a first-time head coach, obviously, taking over for Mike Krzyzewski. And, we'll see who can go far. I think whoever did it would be the first Jewish coach to win the tournament.
I think so.
At least
Krzyzewski is obviously, after a lot of debate amongst basketball fans, we know he's not Jewish.
He's got too much Polish in his name.
Yeah. Did Larry Brown ever win a college NCAA tournament? I don't know.
Not sure. I don't know. I'm sure there's been some Jewish coaches won. There have been a number of Jewish coaches, so I would think that there have been some that somebody's won. But the tournament's only been around that long. Like I'm sure there's been some Jewish coaches won whatever was called the NCAA championship. I'm not sure anyone's won the Final Four. We probably should have a better memory of that.
Yes,
but we'll look into it next time.
Final Four. I can tell you right now. Larry Brown was the coach of Kansas in 1988, who they made it to the Final Four the previous 2 years. But finally, finished it and won D1 champions in the 1988.
Okay, there you go.
Interestingly about Josh Pastner, he is being replaced by Damon Stoudemire, as you mentioned, who was his assistant coach in Memphis for the first 5 years of his career. So they know each other. So I bet you Pastner is probably upset to be moving on. He's likely going to Kentucky. However, probably happy they're keeping it in the Mishpucha. Do want to say about Josh Pastner going to Kentucky that I don't think Kentucky has ever had a Jewish coach. Their most famous coach was indeed named Adolf. Whether or not,
but
that
continues, sort of at a time where being named Adolf was just a normal thing,
right? It's. I wanted to mention. I didn't mention this as part of our Ryan Lavarnway interview, but he lives in Denver. For my 28th birthday, I was in Denver, and my wife took me to the Coors Brewery. And I'm telling my dad, we're going to the Coors Brewery for my birthday. It's going to be a nice time. And my dad, sort of waits for a moment and goes, and by the way, this is like, I'm so excited. I'm ready to, there's a bunch of free beer. It's going to be a really fun day. It's like a giant factory. My wife, the engineer, was really excited about seeing all of the automated machines. The beer drinker was really excited about drinking all of the beer. But when you get into the tour, I called my dad, said, "We're so excited." He took a big pause and said, his name was Adolf, right?
Well, some people were named Adolf back then. The guy who invented the saxophone was named Adolf. I don't think
really Adolf saxophone.
I think it was just sax.
Adolf sax.
Anyways,
and there's also Adolf with a PH versus Adolf with an F. The first thing that comes up when you Google the name Adolf is a TED Talk from a guy whose name is the TED Talk is called "Living with My Disturbing Name." So it's people know it's tough to be to be named Adolf right now.
Yeah, not to mention Adolf Marx, aka Harpo. Not out here canceling the Marx Brothers.
Totally,
at least not for their names.
One of the Jews who founded Hollywood, Adolf Zucker.
Yeah,
that's right. Another one. Adolf Zucker was a Hungarian orphan who made his way to America and made what is now almost $1 billion, starting the Famous Players production company.
Yeah, so I think Adolf Rupp, a legendary Kentucky coach. I think he had a good record on civil rights. Is not really remembering much at the time.
I think so.
He coached at a time where probably it was not okay to have black players, and also at a time when it was okay to have black players. And every coach around that time probably is somewhere on the continuum of did they do it early? Were they very late to it? I think he had some African American players on his team. So
So the story is Adolf Rupp. I don't know. He was first suspended for gambling in 1951. Okay. And a huge, a bunch of his coaches and a bunch of his players were taking bribes and shaving points in the NIT. But that was also, part of Rupp's. They were paying players in 1951, which, ethically is probably fine now, but a thing you can't do. A way Adolf Rupp was very notable in civil rights. He was supporting civil rights. He actually used it sort of somewhat, I would say, like cynically as a way to recruit black players because he thought they could help because it was a competitive advantage. And he sort of did this after losing the 1966 championship game against Texas Western, which was an all-black team.
Road, right? That's what Glory Road's about, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Pat Riley was actually on that team on the, another Mike Jacobs All-Star, just because of sort of his look and demeanor and Miami-ness. Yeah. People think Pat Riley is Jewish. He's not, but Adolf Rupp and Pat Riley had an all-white team on Kentucky. They lost to Texas Western, so Adolf Rupp decided to integrate his team for competitive reasons.
Pat Riley, not Jewish, but he did inspire Michael Douglas's look in Wall Street as Gordon Gekko.
Really?
And Michael Douglas is? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but is Gordon Gekko canonically Jewish?
I don't think so, but Michael Douglas is. And I was just thinking that, it seems like a bummer that we never had prime Michael Douglas play a coach. Especially, basketball coach, college basketball coach. He could have
Bobby,
yeah.
No, totally. Well, Blue Chips is Nick Nolte, and at that point they were somewhat interchangeable. I think
they were sort of peers. Yeah, I just feel like he had the vibe for it of just 1980s Michael Douglas could have done the intensity of a college basketball coach of that era, and given us a great and authoritative Jewish sports film role. Anyways, before we
perhaps I do want to mention, just to finish the story, did a quick look up. Gordon Gekko is canonically Jewish, given that he is based on Oliver Stone's father, Oliver Stone, whose name is really Oliver Silverstein. His father, Louis Silverstein, and a man named Asher Edelman, who is sort of a big real estate investor and corporate raider, who may have coined the phrase "greed is good." used in the movie by Gordon Gekko. So he might not be.
So it was really like what it was Gordon Geckelstein before.
Yeah, Gordon Geckelstein, exactly. So we can finish that. But as well, not to mention a little bit of Michael Milken, right. One of the greatest Jewish criminals of all time. Anywho,
before we get off on too many further tangents, I was gonna say, can't say before we get off on a tangent when we're clearly on a tangent that is as far as it goes. But
talking about financial crime,
too far down. Before we get on any further tangents, let's turn to our interview with Spencer Horwitz.
During World War II, the Nazis began a little-known program of extermination for their own children. In Peter Klenott's new mystery thriller, The Unwanted, 14-year-old Hannah Ziegler is being driven by her grandfather and her psychiatrist to a euthanasia center. 16-year-old Silke Hartenstein graces the cover of Nazi propaganda magazines. Avi Kreisler is a Munich police detective rounded up for Dachau. And a patrician father hopes his son David McAuliffe will be elected the first Catholic president of the United States. In The Unwanted, in the aftermath of war, revenge brings these four people together in ways unimaginable. The Unwanted. Do not skip to the last page. Find it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
And we are here with Spencer Horwitz. Spencer, welcome to the Menschwarmers.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's great to see you, Spencer. Team Israel outfielder, Blue Jays infield, outfield, immediate or imminent, hopefully major leaguer. Ready to see you soon. Where have we found you today? Where are you right now?
I'm in Dunedin, Florida. I got a 3:30 flight to Miami to go down to the WBC. So, I'm excited to get down there.
So that's awesome. So right before you're going to play for Team Israel, if you could tell us a little bit, I guess the answer to this is yes, but how are you Jewish?
So my father was raised in a Jewish household. He was bar mitzvahed, and all my cousins were bar mitzvahed. So I've been around the Jewish culture my whole life, and I've grown to love it and just appreciate it and respect it.
Oh, that's awesome. I know, as you say, we are a Jewish podcast. You're talking to an audience of a lot of bar mitzvahed people. And, you're going to have a lot of fans playing for Team Israel. That's something we hear a lot. Athletes with Jewish upbringings get a lot of Jewish fans wherever they go. So, what does playing for Team Israel, why are you doing it?
I'm doing it because, number one, it's going to be a great experience. It's playing in the World Baseball Classic has been a dream of mine forever. And to be able to represent Israel and my family and where we come from is just an unbelievable experience. I'm really excited to get down there.
That's awesome. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. So, yeah.
Big Jewish community there. Huge,
yeah,
actually.
Absolutely.
And so you were, I guess, a part of it from that aspect. And how did you, perhaps you could tell me a little bit of the story. How'd you get involved with Team Israel?
So I was in Buffalo, I think it was around end of July, early August. And Team Israel reached out to me and they asked me if I would be interested. And I said yes. And then it started the process of seeing if I was eligible. And then around December, they told me I was going to be on the team. And I was extremely excited.
That's amazing. The other day, actually, the stories of how guys wind up doing it. The other day, Ryan Lavarnway was on our show. And he told us a story that it was during a game, during an at-bat, Matt Mervis is up. Lavarnway's catching, and Matt turns around and goes, "Hey, do you think you could get me on Team Israel?" And then turns back around and keeps hitting. And they made it happen. So it's awesome they reached out to you because I think the interest is always very mutual.
Absolutely. I think anyone could play in the WBC wants to.
And did you follow the 2017 team at all?
I didn't follow it when it was happening, but I've looked into it since I've been told I'm playing for Israel, and they've made a heck of a run. So I'm hoping that we can do that. And I was talking to my agent about it, and he was all in on me going. He's like, "Israel's the team of destiny. You got to do it." I'm like, "Perfect, I'm in."
That's amazing. Is your agent Jewish by any chance? Because he might have a vested interest if so. That's awesome. So what are you looking forward to most? Are there any players you're looking forward to meeting? Anybody you're looking to playing with? Like what? Let's talk about the baseball a little bit.
Yeah. I'm excited just to be able to compete in that kind of environment. It'll be the first time I played in a major league stadium, first time
Wow.
I've played with any of these guys. So I'm just excited to meet these guys. And Jock seems like he's going to be the captain, the leader, and
Yeah.
he's got us all fired up in the group chat and saying
That's awesome.
We're going to get out there, kick some ass, and we're all excited about it.
That's amazing. So again, you've had obviously your prospect. You're looking to make the major soon, and then all of a sudden, thanks to your Jewish upbringing, your Jewish connection, you're facing Sandy Alcantara in a stadium with 50,000 people, almost like you blinked and it's there.
Yeah, it's I don't really know what to expect, but I'm excited. It's gonna be an exciting experience, and I'm just gonna take it for what it is and try and grow from it and learn from it and just appreciate every second of it.
That's awesome. So let's talk about Toronto for a couple of minutes, just because the Blue Jays drafted you. I guess it's been 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
What do you know about the city? Have you ever been? You excited to come?
Yeah, never been to Toronto. Here,
do you have a passport? You're gonna need a passport.
I got a passport. I played in Vancouver in 2019, so that's
okay.
I got my passport for that. But no, I'm excited. Never been to Toronto, like I said. Everyone speaks really highly of the city and says how amazing it is and how they never leave once they go. But yeah, I hope one day I can experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I promise you've got at least one Seder invitation coming out of this interview come Passover. Although I think the Jays are on the road during Passover. I think the Bisons are too. But for what it's worth, you got at least one coming next year if it is.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exciting. Toronto's a big city. Growing up in Baltimore, you're going to get a lot of like the same diversity and I'm going to say like pride in living here. Like Baltimore, people love being from Baltimore.
Absolutely.
People love being from Toronto as well. But so maybe what are some of the places you've played so far and what have you enjoyed? And is there any have you found any communities there?
Yeah. First drafted, I got sent to Bluefield, Virginia, which many people have never heard of. But it's
being one of them.
Yeah, it's like Southwest Virginia. It's actually right near where I went to college at Radford, so it felt kind of at home. It's more mountainous terrain, not much, a little slower, and I loved it. It was out in nature and it was great. And then flew up to the opposite end of the country, or not even the country. Went up to Vancouver.
Yeah,
and that was polar opposites of Bluefield. And Vancouver was an alive city, and I absolutely loved it there. People were so friendly. The food was amazing. I wish I got to spend more time there. And then 2020 happened, no season, so I was in Baltimore the whole time.
And if you don't mind me interrupting, what do you do? Like, you're not necessarily have a major league paycheck to rely on. You're waiting, college is done. Like, how did you spend that year?
College wasn't done for me. So
it wasn't done. Amazing.
Yeah. I took some classes online during that, so that was a blessing in disguise that I could do that. And I lucky enough, I was living with my mom, so I had a free place to stay. Paychecks weren't coming in. I just coached a little bit, worked out. Luckily, I gotten the best shape of my life, and that prepared me for 2021, when some people call it my breakout year or whatever. But
the minor league bar mitzvah, growing into a baseball player, from a prospect.
Exactly.
Bar mitzvah.
Yeah. And so in 2021, I was in Hillsboro, Oregon, because of COVID again. I was supposed to be in Vancouver because they switched Vancouver from short season to high A. But Canada wouldn't let us in due to COVID. So we were in Hillsboro, Oregon, spent the season there. Oregon was beautiful. Just the nature out there was unbelievable. Some of the best scenery I've ever seen. And then 2022, I started the year in New Hampshire. New Hampshire was a very, blue collar city, hardworking. It was cold. It was really cold the first half. But no, the summer.
That's like hurts your hands when you swing.
Yeah, it was cold. Going from Florida to New Hampshire, it was cold. And then, it was the summers in June. It got beautiful. And then second half of the season, I was obviously in Buffalo, and Buffalo was a lot more of a like a city life than New Hampshire. And it was great restaurants, great coffee shops. Got to go to Niagara Falls. It was a great experience up there.
Yeah, I really like Buffalo. We live close. Like I feel like Toronto and Buffalo always have a thing with the minor league teams and the Bills and all that. Let's get back a little bit. Were you aware of other Jewish athletes when you were a kid? Like, did you always want to be an athlete, and did being Jewish like come into your play at all?
Always wanted to be an athlete. Sports were always like a big prevalent point in my life, and especially with my dad. He's a big sports guy, always has been. Baseball, football, golf, everything. He obviously introduced me and my brother to sports our whole life, and we were always around it. And then just being around the Jewish culture, I wasn't I'd say too familiar with Jewish athletes, but yeah, I mean, it's an honor to be able to represent them. And hopefully,
I'm sure it's funny. I'm sure you'll get like the athlete we get asked about the most is Sean Green.
Okay.
Like, people ask us like, have you met Sean Green? When's Sean Green going to be on the show? And people always say, oh yeah, I loved Sean Green as a kid. Doesn't matter if they're an athlete. Just, I guess if you're in Toronto or LA, you know about Sean Green.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Baltimore had many Jewish sports icons growing up. Maybe you could be the guy.
Yeah. None off the top of my head, but maybe
Ray Lewis.
I'm
kidding. Yeah, maybe you could be the next one. It's interesting to hear. So, and then how's your spring going? That's sort of like the other thing, what are you working on now? What are your goals? Like, are you having fun? Probably the most important question. Are you having fun?
Yeah. People forget sports are supposed to be fun. But no, it's been great. This is my first big league camp, and I've enjoyed it so much. Working with Don Mattingly every day, and working with Vladdy at first base, and in the outfield next to George Springer. Like, it's been a great experience, and they've all been extremely welcoming and helpful. And I'm so grateful to be with this organization that cares about the players so much. And they really make an investment in the players. And I'm excited to see what's coming up.
That's awesome. We've had a couple of the broadcasters on. We're going to get Shapiro on this show one day. He's on the list. It's going to happen. So we'll keep you posted for when that happens, and you could maybe get some insights into the internal politics, a little bit of the team. Something we talked about with Ryan last week is that you guys are like, I don't want to say but like most Jewish kid sports fans, like you are the fantasy. Like, what if all of the Jewish players got together? Doesn't matter where they're from. They just got together and played. Would you guys be competitive? And yes, the answer is yes, definitely. You guys, what would it look like? What if somebody like Jock Peterson, picks Israel over America? Like, that's so cool.
Yep.
And like, what's that going to look like? The Jays have had a lot of Jewish players that, have been fans of before. Rowdy Tellez, just before, and Kevin Pillar before that. And the community tends to really rally around those guys. And they're going to do that anywhere you go. Like, I should have asked this earlier. It's my bad. I skipped it on the page. But in the minors, did people ever ask you if you were Jewish? Did it ever come up?
Yeah, having the last name Horwitz, a lot of people, they do ask. But yeah, that's normally all the conversation is just like, are you Jewish? And I'm like, yeah. And then a lot of people will be like, oh, that's cool. And that's pretty much it. It's nothing. Yeah. Normally doesn't go any further than that. But yeah, a lot of people do ask.
Do you find it's more Jewish people or non-Jewish people that ask? Maybe that's a personal question, but
yeah. No, you're fine. I'd say probably more non-Jewish people. It's
interesting.
They're just, it's more like they just don't know. And they're just curious, and typically what it is.
A Jewish pro athlete in rural Oregon seems like a bit of an oddity.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely not the most common thing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's super cool. Obviously, that's why we have this show. Again, wish you the best of luck, both in the rest of spring training. Hopefully we'll see you and chat again when you get to Toronto.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Spencer, and we'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you so much to Spencer for a wonderful and enlightening conversation about him, life on the road, and being Jewish in Baltimore. And as for our gentle listener, I will keep you posted on whether or not he does indeed come to my Seder.
That's right. It's funny. Before we started this whole podcast, we were talking about the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. I would say very much in the manner of Dave Rose and Happy Endings trying to explain the subprime mortgage crisis. So that's a deep cut Happy Endings reference to anyone who remembers that show. Of just not like we both scanned a few articles. I would say that was our level of understanding. And we finished up our first part by talking about financial crimes as well. We should mention as well, one of the greatest financial criminals of all time, Steve Cohen, is now bankrolling the New York Mets to maybe do a pennant.
Do you mean great in like the sort of massive sense, or great in like
and terrible,
the pejorative sense?
Like Oz. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the great and terrible. Steve Cohen, the great and terrible.
Yeah. And it's a good segue to mention as well that, there's a big Jewish holiday coming up. I'm talking, of course, about tax season. And that's a great opportunity for everyone to donate to the Canadian Jewish News. The Canadian Jewish News, now a registered journalism organization as defined by the Canada Revenue Agency. And so that means if you're in Canada and you give a donation, you will give a tax receipt.
That's a new way to support your favorite shows like us.
Yeah, exactly.
And Bonjour Chai and Yehupitzville and the rest.
And all the rest. So please give generously. You can find more information about that on the Canadian Jewish News website, the cjn.ca/donate. Wanted to mention as well that I looked it up when we were on break. Lior Berman is a guard on the Auburn Tigers team. Wasn't sure if he was still on the team, but he's definitely one Jew who is in the NCAA tournament. So root for Auburn, I guess. As a committed Alabama football fan, I'm not going to be doing that, but feel free to root for Bruce Pearl and Lior.
Do you think
to make it through the tournament?
Lior Berman is from Birmingham. Went to high school close to Birmingham. Do you think? Now, was a walk-on. Do you think anytime he like throws a pass away, you've got, some Auburn booster that like writes down that he doesn't approve of Bruce Pearl's choice in players, thinks there's something going on?
You know what? I think with walk-ons, there's a little bit of latitude that's given because it's like they're not really making the difference in the team, and you really want guys who are like good character guys. So I think it's like, if he makes an errant pass in the last 10 minutes of a game, that they're up on their opponent by 30, then it's not a big deal.
I also believe there are probably several Lior Bermans in the world. However, he is almost certainly the only one who is not currently living in Israel.
Right. I also wanted to mention
there's
probably some other ones, but I also wanted to mention that in the time that we were recording this podcast, Puerto Rico did complete the mercy rule perfect game through 8.
Wow.
It was the first perfect game in World Baseball Classic history. This is not exactly a high point in Israeli baseball history, but it is history. It is history, and I think we got to take your lumps where they come. Just rebound tomorrow. We got Dominican Republic. When you're listening to this, the Dominican Republic game should be coming up. Let's rebound and beat that team. They can be beat. They can be beat. Israel's a good team. Anything could happen.
Maybe we can say, a great miracle happened there for Puerto Rico.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a miracle. Not ours, but somebody's.
Some miracle, yeah. Anyways, until next time, I'm Jamie, and that's Gabe. We're the Menschwarmers. Find all our stuff on the Canadian Jewish News website, as I said before, the cjn.ca, and follow us on Twitter @Menschwarmers.